everybody. Welcome back to Mondays with Mooch. I know it's been a while since I've uploaded any of these, but we got a new game going where I'm going to be working with the guys that do Patched. We're going to bring this all to you guys on one platform to make everything easier. So I'm excited to get back to it, excited to get back to recording. Today's episode is brought to you by Core Medical. For those of you that don't know, when I was around 35, I started feeling really down, tired, lack of energy. Just really dragging to the gym, and I ended up getting my blood levels checked and realizing that I was low on testosterone and some other hormones. And once I got that taken care of, man, it really brought me back to life, gave me energy, helped with recovery time, and actually is the main reason that I started getting into Jiu Jitsu. So I'll leave a link here. You guys check out Core Medical, tell them that Mooch sent you, and you'll get a discount. One of the things that I wanted to do with Mondays with Mooch is kind of talk more about some of my story. And I know a lot of times you guys have emailed me and a lot of you have asked about my jiu-jitsu journey, how it affected my life, how it helped my life. And it's also a topic I talk about sometimes on Patch, but also in my book when I talk about how it helped me leave the club or get away from the club. So today we're going to get into that a little bit, and then I'll leave it open to emails for questions and we can follow up. So I know it's really cheesy to say, but a lot of people will say that jiu-jitsu's changed their life. And for me, it changed a lot of positive habits of my life. And that's something that I really wanted to kind of harp in on, is that I was in graduate school for several years. And this is my last 2 years of graduate school. I was in between, like on my lunch breaks, I was lifting weights. After school, I'd be lifting weights. And I really started to get bored. I was staying really active in the club, but by now I'm 10 years in. I'm in Oregon. Things are running pretty well on their own. And I was really missing like some sort of drive or some sort of motivation. And right around the time I got back on the hormone replacement therapy, I was really pushing and looking for something to do outside of just lifting weights. So a lot of my friends had been doing jiu-jitsu at the time. Me being me, I didn't want to do the same thing as everybody else. So I was looking into some other topics or some other things I could do. And at first I started going to Krav Maga. I found a local gym in Salem. I was pretty excited. I went in there and took my first class. And the first thing I noticed is there was a lot of law enforcement in there. I came home and told my wife, and in my mind, if you're in training with someone that thinks you're the enemy, worst case scenario, they might beat me up a little bit or try and ask me some questions. But instead, they went to the police union and they got me kicked out. So I had 1 day of Krav Maga under my belt before I got the phone call from the instructor that I wasn't welcome back there. Another Mongol from my chapter had been doing jiu-jitsu for a while. I'd been going to some of his tournaments, I've been meeting some of his guys, and a couple other guys in the Spokane chapter had been doing it, so I figured I would give it a shot. And unbeknownst to me, the head instructor there at the gym in Salem where I was at, we actually went to high school together. We were both on the high school wrestling team together. He was a couple years younger than me. But not only did we wrestle together, but we used to have like boxing fight clubs at his house where we'd all show up with boxing gloves and beat each other up. And so I actually had a long history with him already. So getting back on the mat from someone I trusted actually really helped me a lot. And due to having like a wrestling background and wrestling experience, I think that really sparked my interest and made me feel like it reminded me of the old days, being back on the mat, being a part of a team, and it really stuck to it. In fact, by now, the Mongols had a rule in my region that everyone had to work out at least 3 days a week, whether that meant lift weights or train, just something active. And I was trying to get more and more guys to do jiu-jitsu with me. And so I actually even tricked them one time and used the gym address as the address for church. Told them that's where we're meeting up and to bring a change of clothes. And it didn't go over well, but everyone was excited to at least get training and check it out. And after that, we ended up even buying wrestling mats and putting them in at our chapter's clubhouse. And so before or after our meetings on the weekends, we were down there beating each other up, showing each other moves. And it was really helping out a lot as far as morale goes, as far as keeping everybody in shape. It was bringing a lot of positives to the table. So at this time, I'm fully involved in jiu-jitsu. I'm competing. I'm watching everything about it, reading everything I could about it. And unbeknownst to me, one of the main guys in the jiu-jitsu circle in Southern California, Orlando Sanchez, he was an ADCC world champion. He competed at ADCC numerous times, was a big friend of the club's. And so I reached out to him and really started training with him a lot every time I was down in LA for national runs. I was time there for president's meetings. Pretty much any time I was in LA, I'd spend the weekend over to Orlando's. I'd sleep at his gym or sleep at his house, and we'd be training a lot. And so I was really advancing pretty quickly, and I was getting ready to compete at the world championships down there for the white belts. And I had come in probably 2 days early, and I was sleeping at Orlando's house. And I was really starting to think that I was God's gift to jiu-jitsu. I was beating up a lot of the dudes from his team. And keep in mind, like, jiu-jitsu is split up for like age brackets. And so I wasn't kicking all these 20-year-olds asses, but I was doing really well. And I thought, hey, this is for me. And then in walked this team from Southern Illinois called Pedigo Submission Fighting. These guys were disheveled. They drove straight from Illinois to LA, cram pack in three different cars. They weren't like the clean cut guys that were at the Gracie gym I was at. They had like borrowed D's. They were all dirty. And so the first one I rolled with, he was, I don't know, probably 140 pounds, kind of like looked like he had an emo haircut. And I was thinking to myself that I was going to kick this dude's ass. And he proceeded to beat me about, about 7 times in one round. He submitted me. And then I went with the next guy from Pedigo Submission Fighting, and the same thing happened. And after the third time, I said, this is where I want to train. These are the guys I want to train with. I don't want to feel like I'm the best here. I want to train with the best. And so I remember going home and talking to my wife about it a lot. At this time, I was kind of so focused on jiu-jitsu. I was really considering kind of taking a step away from the club or just kind of putting it more on the back burner. At the time, I was the regional rep for the Northwest, and I oversaw all of the out-of-country chapters. And as I was getting more involved in jiu-jitsu and less involved in the club, I was bringing up my homies to take those positions. So I gave Washington chapter to one of my friends. My brother started overseeing Oregon. Some of the other guys started taking over the out-of-country chapters. And I was really trying to take things off my plate with the club so I could focus more and more on jiu-jitsu. It was really becoming a big spark in my life. I was 35, 36 by now. I've been doing the club thing 10 years. I'd been out of sports since high school, so to speak. And it was really, really motivating me to get back to eating healthy and training and working out. I often describe to people one of the positive effects of jiu-jitsu, and it's really similar to whether you're sitting on the table getting a 4-hour tattoo, whether you're on a motorcycle ride and it's freezing cold and you've still got 2 more hours to go, or whether you're pinned under a dude in jiu-jitsu and you're getting, it sucks, you're out of breath and you're tired, but there's no way out until the bell rings. And it's really taught me just that always pushing forward, that there's no one there to help you. There's no one there other than yourself. And it's up to you to push through and get through that. And these things really resonated with me from time on the road to the training, to even being at work, giving tough tasks, having challenging things, to just not give up. The other thing I talk about a lot because I'm a youth therapist, and one of the things I tell parents is how important it is to get youth involved in team sports, but also individual sports. And one of the things I like so much about wrestling and jiu-jitsu is if you go out and lose a match, you lost because of you. Either the opponent was better, which means you weren't training enough, you haven't been training as hard, maybe you missed some classes, maybe your cardio was down. These are all your fault. You can't go out there and say, hey, I lost this because the quarterback, or I had a great game, but the running back didn't do well. The losses come to you and only motivate you, and you can see the direct results. And so you still get the team vibe, right? Like you're still participating in the team, you're traveling as the team, you're putting up the team points. But at the end of the day, the responsibility comes on you. And that's something that translates to life every single day. And if you want to get better, you have to put in the time. When I first moved to Pedigo Submission Fighting, there was 2 guys on the team close to my size and age, and we would go back and forth. We were pretty close to the same ability level. We'd go back and forth. And, these guys were young guys, and they started training 2-3 times a day, 6 days a week. And with my injury and life happening, I was going less and less. And now when I roll against them, I can't hold a candle to them. And it's not because they were more talented or they were better athletes than me. It's because they trained harder. And that's, I think, the biggest takeaway for me with jiu-jitsu is if you want to get the outcome, you got to put in the work. And at this time, too, is also when I got back on the testosterone replacement therapy, and my recovery was happening quicker. I was healing quicker. I wasn't hurt as bad or hurt as often. And I was really just tunnel focused on this. And so I started looking around the country on where I wanted to train. Orlando was really talking to me to go down to LA. But, I knew if I went to LA, that's the heart of the club, that I wasn't going to be taking any steps away. I figured, in fact, I'd probably be getting roped more into it. So in that year, 2017, I graduated from graduate school. I was looking for a new job. For those of you that read my book will know that I got involved in a lawsuit against the Oregon Youth Authority, and where I was hired there as an intern to work as a counselor for the youth. The very first day was the training, and they sent me just an address to go to the training. And so I drive to the address, I pull in, and in my shock, I looked up and I was sitting there in front of the Oregon State Police Academy. Apparently that's where they do all the training for anyone that goes through the youth authority. And I thought maybe it's my ego, maybe I'm being cocky. No one here is going to know me. And as soon as I walked in, I walked past the state chief of police, found out that they were likely teaching a class somewhere in that hallway about me because I couldn't get 5 feet without people staring at me. And within about 2 hours, I was kicked out of there. I was questioned about my membership in the club. I admitted that I was a club member. I told them why I thought that would make me a good therapist and how long I'd been going to school. And I was subsequently fired. So I hired an attorney and I sued the state for wrongful discrimination. And I did win. But the downside was it was in every paper in Oregon. And this was at the same time that I'm looking for a new job, fresh out of college. And so I also thought that was another good reason to move. On top of that, my wife at the time, well, my wife now, my girlfriend at the time, she was starting graduate school as well. And when I was looking at Pedigo Submission Fighting Gym in Southern Illinois, they have a college nearby that had the same program that she was wanting. So it kind of seemed like a no-brainer. So, we said goodbye to our friends. We packed everything up. Packed the 2 cars full of what we got and our dogs, and we drove up there to Mount Vernon, Illinois, sight unseen, to this town that had 15,000 people outside of St. Louis. And it was pretty surreal getting out there because it reminded me of like the old days in Portland. Houses were cheap, neighbors are waving at each other. It was a pretty cool like Midwestern vibe, but I was so excited to get to the gym. At the time, most of the guys that trained at the gym lived there. So there was guys from all over the country. But the team hadn't gotten that big yet. There's a documentary that came out about the team later that I'll shoot the links down in the description. That once that documentary came out and the team started winning some major championships, more and more people started moving there. But when I was there in 2017, there was maybe 20 of us. Majority of the guys lived on the mats, slept at the gym, didn't do anything but train jiu-jitsu. Now, at this time, I'm a grown adult. I got a full-time job. Got dogs, an old lady, so I couldn't live at the gym, but I got a house about six blocks from the gym, and that became our new life, working out at the gym, training, and working. And things were going really good. Things were positive. There were no Mongols anywhere near where I was at. So I was in Southern Illinois. At the time, there had been no Mongols in Illinois. There was one small chapter in Kansas City, but none other in Missouri, and one chapter in Indiana, and none in Tennessee. And so it was kind of a place for me at the time that I thought I'd be able to chill and just really focus on jiu-jitsu. That didn't quite work out. The head coach, Heath Pedigo, his brother, Randy Pedigo, was riding at the time. And Randy was a pretty local legend. And Randy had asked me to see if I wanted to help start a chapter. Didn't take long before some friends from the Spokane chapter had friends in St. Louis. And by the time I left Illinois, we had 2 chapters in Illinois, 4 in Missouri, 4 in Indiana, and 1 in Tennessee. You could see that my focus shifted a little bit. But initially with my jiu-jitsu goal, I was spot on. Until 2018, I was diagnosed with a rare disease called OPLL, where the ligament in my neck calcified, causing crushed discs, stenosis, arthritis, a really lot of pain. For a long time, I was dealing with this pain thinking this is what happens when you're almost 40 and you do jiu-jitsu. But it started getting so bad, it was keeping me up at night. I couldn't really move my arms well. There was no respite, I couldn't sit in a certain position, it wouldn't hurt. So finally, after months and months of chiropractor work, I went and saw a doctor and got an x-ray and found out about this disease. So I met a specialist who said that I was going to have a pretty major spinal surgery, and I didn't want to. So I went and saw 4 other neurosurgeons around the country, and it was the same consensus. In 2018, I had a full cervical spinal fusion from level C3 down to T1, so pretty much took up my whole neck. And I was told that I could no longer do jiu-jitsu more, couldn't ride motorcycles anymore, and it was really going to change the quality of my life. And with my motivation for training and my motivation for what I was doing in life, I really didn't want that to be something that was going to stop me. And so as soon as I got out of bed rest, the team helped build me like this little corner in the mats, like a little bed where I could lay there upright and at least watch class and watch everybody train. And they would help me get up and move. And it was this really family vibe. And because so many guys had moved there that didn't have family there or lived in the mats, we did holidays together, birthdays together, parties together. I was a bad influence, took everyone out on the weekends. I mean, we stayed active and together all the time. And it really brought this family vibe, especially in a place where we didn't know anybody initially. Recovering from my neck, I slowly started to do it again. I was more focused on training and teaching and really just practicing moves because I knew I wasn't going to be able to compete anymore. There was no way to say how anyone else was going to compete against me or they were going to stay away from my neck. But I did have the luxury of competing with these high-level guys at my own team that I knew weren't going to hurt me. So when they know I have a neck injury or they knew something was going on, they would roll with me and we would have a good time, but I wasn't worried about getting hurt. That really changed how I felt about life in general with so much going on. At this time is when I was getting ready to leave the club. I subsequently did leave the Mongols. And, one of the things we talk about a lot in Patched and these other guys I talked to on social media is what do you replace with when you leave the club, right? And when you're in club life, you're meeting with your brothers once a week. You've got plans and runs coming up, rides, you spend time on the road. You're doing that time under adversity. And for me, the jiu-jitsu team is what helped me move on, because I was meeting these guys on the mats. I was seeing them several times a week. We were traveling together to compete. We were going through the adversity with tournaments or hard training. I mean, our gym, before we moved, was literally into laundromat, which is why they were called the Daisy Fresh Laundromat. The sign was still up front. There was no showers. There was one bathroom. There was no air conditioning, no heater, just old wrestling mats. Gritty training. So when it was winter, our mats were literally frozen, and we'd have to wear socks and turn on propane heaters until the mats would warm up. It would be so cold that the doors would freeze shut with condensation. In the summer, it was so hot that it was disgustingly sweaty. You couldn't breathe because it'd be so humid. And so I really got comfortable not being comfortable. And these were the same types of things I could equate to being on the side of the road in a rainstorm with a pack of bikes, or being out on the road and caught in the snow. And, all these like bad environments we were replicating, but in a positive and healthy environment. But when people look back and say jiu-jitsu changed their life, this is what I wanted to point out to you, is this is how it changed my life. Not only did it give me a healthy outlet and a positive purpose, but it helped me move on from something that was a major part of my life that at the time was really starting to get down on me. I was having close friends die. I had threats on my life, law enforcement breathing down my neck. And I really wanted to say, look, I can go back and do something positive and be a part of something positive. And that's what this jiu-jitsu brought to me. It's something I continue to do. I continue to train. I've trained all over the country with all sorts of big name people. And it was a big win for me too, when they said I couldn't compete or do jiu-jitsu or ride motorcycles anymore. Within a year, I was back to training. And that same year, I rode my motorcycle cross country by myself there and back just to prove I could do it. So I really wanted to show you guys, if you're trying to get out of motorcycle club life, gang life, or just looking for direction in your life, finding martial arts or finding something to give back to, whether it's working out, boxing, jiu-jitsu, where you can really push yourself, but still build that team camaraderie and that vibe with others, that's going to be the piece that you're replacing. And it's in a healthy manner. And I know a lot of you guys are doing it because a lot of you guys are hitting me up about it. So keep training with the jiu-jitsu. Hit me up if you got any questions. So when I first started getting into working out, like anybody, I was really pushing myself. I started getting compliments about my size, so I was really excited to get back in there. I started eating healthier. I was doing all these things that I could to really, put my all into lifting weights and getting back into it. And one thing that I noticed is by now I'm 35, and I noticed things weren't going the same as they were when I was, in my late teens and early 20s. I wasn't putting on size as quick, having the energy to continue my sets were getting tough. And I started talking to some of my powerlifting friends and some of my other friends in the weightlifting community. And they started talking about, have you ever had your blood levels checked? Do you know where your testosterone level is? And one of the things I didn't realize, and something that I'm still learning, is that people that live in high stress environments, such as first responders, military veterans, gang members, because your body is constantly at fight or flight, your testosterone levels are generally pretty high, they're peaking. And then when you put those things behind you, they're crashing. And once they crash, depending on your age, it's very hard to get them back, and your body starts producing lower levels. And so I never knew this, but I was in a group of very at-risk people for having low testosterone. And thankfully, a buddy of mine pointed it out, and I got my blood levels checked. And at first, thankfully, since I was older, I was realizing that I could have got cheaper stuff off the street, but this is something that you're putting into your body, you're injecting into your muscles, and I didn't want to trust it. There was just no way that I was going to do something like that. So I was going to pay the extra and go through the doctor. And I'm thankful that I did, because I have friends that have gone the other way, and not that they got super injured or anything, but just that the science of it alone changes so often. And if you're not meeting with the doctor or meeting with people that are professionals in the industry and know what they're talking about, you're really either putting yourself at risk for being hurt, or you're just leaving a lot out on the table. So you can make the most of it. And so that's when I really started getting into HRT and TRT, and really seeing these positive results. It's what started motivating me to get back in the gym on so many levels. I mean, there was the mental health level, right? I'm feeling better. I want to get after it. But also, hey, I'm spending all this money on these products so that I could work out and be in shape. So that was motivating me too. And so not only did it help me physically, but mentally it really helped give me a drive as well. And when I'm mentioning HRT or TRT, I know some of you guys aren't really familiar with that, but TRT is testosterone replacement. That's just matching what your body used to naturally produce, getting you back to the levels you were when you were in your 20s. HRT is hormone replacement treatment. That's the big thing too, is it's not just testosterone that could be changing in your youth or as you age. Like for me, I found out that my B12 was super low, my vitamin D was low, I was low in iron, and then prolactin, some of my other different hormones and vitamins were really low, and I never would have found that out without a blood test. It's something that I would never have treated without knowing. And so, I really swear by getting that blood test, checking your levels, and seeing what you can do to improve your life and just maximize what you have. So hit the link, tell them Mooch sent you. Let's get your blood levels tested, and let's get you back on the mats and doing what you guys do best. Thanks. Yeah.